This week, I'm going to wrap up the multiple part segments on the banquets in the Gospel of Matthew by talking about the final banquet, the final feast that we see in Matthew 26. All of Jesus's life, all of his mission and everything had come down to this moment. He had talked about the kingdom of heaven. He had modeled the kingdom of heaven, and he saved the best for last.
Welcome to the HHP Podcast. My name is Chris Franke, and I am the senior pastor of HFF Church in Oklahoma City. Join me and others from around the country as we talk all things Bible, church, and family. We may be right, we may be heretical, but that's for you to decide. Drop a like, a share, a comment, subscribe, and let's get to it.
Throughout the Torah and the prophets, and all of the years, all of the interactions, all of the really joyous moments and all of the really low moments, Israel was looking for their king. Israel was looking for that Messianic king, the Messianic age, the hope that there would no longer be this exile and torment and cyclical pattern that was happening, that everything would be made whole. And Matthew goes to great lengths to record these concepts, not only talking about the Exodus and what was foretold that there would become a day where there would be a greater Exodus in the future, the prophets had foretold of through the cross and the work of Jesus, but also the ushering in of the new covenant that the prophet Jeremiah had spoken about in Jeremiah chapter 31. Today, I want to look at the final banquet, the final feast that Matthew records in Matthew chapter 26. It's commonly known as the Last Supper. For those in the Messianic corner of Christianity, it's known as Pesach or the Passover Seder. It is a time when Jesus wasn't just out meeting with the crowds or feeding the 5,000 or the 4,000 or tax collectors or sinners. It was an intimate moment of Jesus and his apprentices. It was a shadow of the cross looming large. And yet he breaks bread and he shares wine. And he says, "Do this in remembrance of me." Not do this because it's Erev Shabbat and we bless the bread and we do the wine. Do this in remembrance of me. When you gather at this Passover, when you gather at this Pesach, you will no longer do this just because you came out of Egypt. You will do this because of me, the Messianic King, God in the flesh. And what the apprentices fought over who was the favorite and who was the best, and Judas was already in the midst of his plot. Jesus never wavered from his kingdom mission. And he promised them in verse 29, "I tell you, I will not drink again of this fruit of the vine, this cup, until the day when I drink it with you in my Father's kingdom." It was a promise and a covenant of a future time when he will banquet and feast with us. This meal, this interaction, this banquet is a future feast. It's the final eternal banquet in the presence of God, a wedding supper when the new heavens and the new earth and new creation is birthed. There will be no more pain. There will be no more sorrow. There will be no more hunger. There will be no more thirst. Whether it's from Matthew chapter 9 all the way through Matthew 26, Jesus keeps inviting people to a banquet table. The question is, how did we turn that into an obligation and what was an invitation? And yet we still find ourselves with the same problem. In the invitation in the Gospel of Matthew, they were too distracted. They were too religious. They were too righteous. They were too busy. They were too self-sufficient. They were too egotistical and narcissistic to even show up on an invitation. And yet we still have the same problem in some of the corners of Christianity where we've turned this into an obligation. Well, this person can't come, or this person doesn't understand. And we spit on these banquets of freedom that Jesus had invited those who saw who he was in the hope of this Messianic king. If we come, we are to come in humility. We are to come clothed in grace, ready to not feast on things like bread and wine to fill our bellies and to become drunkards, but to be ready to be filled with the power and the presence of Jesus Christ himself. The table is already set. The feast is already ready. The Bible says the kingdom is here. The question is, will you come?
If this podcast has blessed you, please consider supporting by visiting our website and making a donation. For more resources, blogs, podcasts, please visit us at hff.church. Looking for a church home? Join us for Saturday Church in OKC every Saturday morning, starting at 10:30.